All right, here I am. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the delayed start. For those of you who are new to the channel, I'm meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Good evening on this really spectacular Tuesday. We had temperatures climb up not only above freezing, but we actually got into the low and middle 40s. So we were not only above 32 for the first time in nearly 17 days, but we actually made it up to be above average for the day. But of course, that's going to come to an end tonight. We've got a shot of colder air that's coming in. And I want to address, before we get into what's going on currently and in the forecast period, I want to jump right off the bat to the long range, because this has been a subject of conversation with a number of people, including those that don't seem to understand how weather patterns work. As much as I try to explain to it, they just seem to kind of fall back in these sort of predictive responses. And rather than taking a step back, which I think is very important to do, you take a step back and look at what's going on. I happened to take a look today at some of these climate models. If you go on Tropical Tidbits and click on climate, you can see some of the weekly model views. And one of the things I noticed, and it'll be interesting to see if this holds, but going through the weeklies, the model here for this week has it, above average, and I think it also incorrectly has next week as above average. But as we move through into weeks 3 and 4, and we start to get toward the end of January, we have an increasing area of below average temperatures again across all of Canada and into the northern plains. So when I saw that, I said, well, you know what, let me jump to the monthlies. So we'll look at the CFS monthlies and with what's being forecast, and here we have February. So for the month of February, the model, which if I remember correctly, up until about 3 or 4 days ago, was forecasting above normal temperatures for February throughout much of the eastern United States, has now gone to below normal. And in fact, when we look to March, to April, and into May, it has a rather cool pattern here in the long range. So I want to just kind of emphasize the fact that what I think is going to happen here with respect to the long range is something that I've been saying over the last few days, and that is we have a primary pattern that sets up, and then there's a bit of a break in that pattern, which I think we're in now. We are going to see that for the next maybe week or so. When I say a break in the pattern, I'm talking about a break in the primary pattern. I'm not talking about a complete 180-degree flip here, okay? We are going to see, I think we're going to have some opportunities for snow and ice in different areas. I also think that the pattern is becoming a bit more active. Also, I just realized too, I'm going to have to switch out of these satellites because, let me just get rid of them, because they now have gone to the GOES, the new GOES 16, and so the old GOES is gone. I got to kind of find out where I can put some pictures in for you so we can have them for the show. But no, I just want to show you what's happening here with respect to watches and warnings. There isn't too much happening in the east, but there's a large concentration of watches and advisories up in the northern plains and on up into the upper parts of the Midwest, into Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin, where we have winter storm watches up. Advisories in the western Dakotas down through Nebraska and Kansas. Little pocket of winter storm warnings in parts of Montana. Advisories also extend throughout much of the state, then kind of scattered down through the Rockies. And of course, we're having some issues in California right now, particularly in Southern California, where a major storm has moved in, and that has produced a significant amount of rain. And we are, in fact, seeing some, apparently there was some flooding that occurred, mudslides, thanks to a dam that burst just outside of Burbank and there were apparently fatalities with this, sadly. But I'll show you on the representation here on the model with regards to this. And this storm system right in here into Southern California is loaded with moisture. We noticed that on the satellite loops the last couple of days, a lot of subtropical moisture that got involved here. The east is cold. There's activity up in the northern Rockies with some snow and rain. Now that California low is going to translate into the Rockies tomorrow and into Thursday, and that's why we have these watches up. You can see the snow from the central Rockies on up through the Dakotas into northern Minnesota. The actual surface low winds up in North Texas. Here in the east, this next high is going to pull out offshore, and that's going to start to bring in warm air up from the South Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico up the eastern seaboard, and you can guarantee that's going to eat away a lot of the snowpack. Now, with this system moving east, as we move into the weekend, and I'm looking at Thursday night here, okay, there's another high that pops, another high that drops down out of Canada with some cold air behind it. We've got more snows up in the northern Rockies with some rain along the coast of the Pacific Northwest down into northern California. That system in the east is going to be watched closely here, because we are going to have some cold air that's going to come down over the western lakes and drain southward through the middle Mississippi Valley. So I think that we have a shot for some icing here, and perhaps even some significant icing that could occur from northeastern Arkansas and on up through Illinois, southern Illinois, much of central Indiana into northwestern Ohio, at least initially. And when we move this along, that colder air eventually winds up into Ohio and western New York and western Pennsylvania as low pressure moves into West Virginia. So this might be a sizable icing event for the northern areas of the Ohio Valley, and eventually up and through upstate New York and interior New England. I think this could be a sizable icing event. Now, one of the things that I want to watch for, and not all models agree with this, when we have a situation like this with cold air that drapes across the top, sometimes that cold air, models don't see the importance of that cold air. The sheer weight of it tends to cause the frontal boundary to set up a bit further south than what's initially modeled. We actually do have some models wanting to have that frontal boundary down as far south as just north of Philadelphia to New York City to Boston, which means that areas not too far north and west of the coast may eventually get involved with some icing out of this. But that'll be a problem in the forecast for the next couple of days. That's something we're going to be watching out for. Once that's done, the action is going to shift again to the east, as there will be some energy dropping out of Canada, and I think depending on how that energy evolves, we could have something trying to form along the east coast along about late Tuesday night into Wednesday. And you can see the GFS today kind of did that. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to see weather systems come in to the northwest. So I want to examine the upper air pattern today, because there is a marked change. And going into this theme that we've been talking about, which is the fact that we had this primary pattern that lasted for almost 3 weeks. And actually, I could make the case that that primary pattern set up even before that. It just took a little while for the colder air to move into the eastern part of the United States. Here's our jet stream now, and you see the action off the California coast, that wrapped up low that's coming in there. The rains should wind down soon, if they haven't already, as this area gets kicked away to the east. And then we get a bit of drying to go on into Southern California. But one of the things that I've noticed going the long range of the last several runs is that eventually the pattern is going to be set up in a way where we are going to start to see more frequent weather systems coming into the west. And that is going to be important. So here's our trough for the east for Friday and Saturday. There'll probably be 50s and 60s trying to shoot up the coast. I don't know how far north that warm air is going to get. Trough along at 90 west. If this trough were closer to 85 west, then I certainly would think that it would be more problematic for ice up down in the coastal areas of the Northeast, but looks like the trough initially here is too far to the west. Notice big ridge up in the west coast, kind of have that alleyway for cold air again to come in, and we're certainly going to get into some of that. Now energy rotates around, and this is the trough that it has for the middle of next week. The models kind of go from run to run where they have it, you know, impressive, less impressive. So I think that's going to be something to watch. But then notice the flow from the west. You've got a kind of a split flow set up. You've got a cold alleyway opened up from northern Canada into the Great Lakes and Northeast, and then you've got this Pacific jet that's going to be rolling weather systems in pretty much one after another as we move through the latter part of next week and beyond. So I think we're going to have a fairly I think it's going to be a fairly exciting pattern going forward overall. And the long range to me certainly suggests that at some point we are going to see the weather pattern perhaps try another stab at the a cold setup, a cold regime. I don't know that it could be as extreme as what we just saw, but it might be it might be something less. And if it's less cold with a more active jet stream pattern that's bringing weather systems across the country, that could mean for more frequent snow chances. So that's something to think about as we go into the long range. I saw a few of you guys were throwing some questions about, you know, with respect to snow. So why don't we take a look at one of these snowfall maps. And I just want to caution you, by the way, that this the problem with these maps is that kind of includes sleet, so you got to really be careful with respect to the numbers that it shows. But I saw someone asking for Detroit. Now it's producing, I would think it should be cold enough for mostly snow in Detroit. So, you know, it does look like it has a fairly decent snow event there on the order of about maybe 3 to 6 inches. You see some higher amounts there going south and west into southern Illinois and Indiana. I don't know how much of that is freezing rain and sleet and how much of that is actually snow. So I would, again, be very cautious of the numbers. But notice that, at least from the standpoint of the extent of the frozen or freezing precipitation, it heads almost into northern Mississippi and northern Alabama. Meanwhile, when this system translates to the east, much of the activity is confined on the GFS because it has the track furthest west of all the models, up and through upstate New York and interior northern New England. However, I would point out that there are some models that, again, have that frontal boundary much further to the south, which means that the ice boundary may wind up being much further to the south, especially on Saturday when the wave goes by. So we're going to need to watch that very closely. Rain may be a bit of an issue here with this system this weekend, so I think maybe we'll put up the total accumulated precip, and it looks like this could be a fairly sizable rain producer for parts of the Northeast on the order of 1 to 2 inches worth of liquid, and even back in the area where we're seeing the icing producing some 2-inch liquid amounts. That's significant. We'll have to watch that closely as well. If 2 inches of liquid verifies and we're talking about freezing rain, we're going to have some big problems there. In the west, with respect to the rainfall, the Southern California rain, this is a bit early on in the game, and much of it's already fallen. Models producing an additional ½ inch to some pockets of 2-inch rain amounts into next Tuesday. And let me just go a little further into time, and you can see the expansion of the rain area in the Pacific Northwest down into northern and central California with the activity that's going on up in the Northwest. And snowfall over the next 10-day period there. Let's put this up, and again, substantial in the northern Rockies, even some decent activity in the central Rockies, also across Montana into the Dakotas. Looks like a fair amount of snow, and you're getting some snows in the mountains down into California, even a few dots in the Southern California mountains. Okay, my buddies over in Europe and England and Ireland, I think you're going to have a chance here for a little snow in your future. And here's the GFS 10-day snowfall forecast map showing some pockets of substantial amounts over parts of central and northern England and through Scotland, and also up through northern Ireland. You can see a lot of activity also in eastern France and over through the Alps, and in the usual areas that you would get at this time of year as you head out toward Poland and over into Eastern Europe. But we do seem to have a channel of cold air that's going to open up from Greenland at some point next week. So at least right now, when we take a look at this, a couple of rain systems coming through here. The pattern in Europe overall is warm, but you start to see that expanding area of snow next week. And now we get into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. We are seeing some precipitation. Now, the prior run of the model was colder than this run of the model was. It looks like this one got a little warmer. I'm not buying that right now, but we'll give it a better look here tomorrow as we get closer. I can even back it up one run and show you that prior run had a bit of a colder look. Let me just back it away here for next week. So you can see the snows start to spread out from cold air into Ireland and England here, coming in from Greenland, and that cold northwest flow lasts all next week. So I think you know, the new GFS probably doesn't have the surface quite right. I kind of buy the colder idea that was shown by the prior run. So you know, certainly I think interesting times lie ahead. Do not, by any stretch of the imagination, should you be at all. I got to find myself. I kind of lost myself back here. Hang on. Where did I go? Where am I? Oh, this is not good. All right, so give me a second here while I make myself reappear. Hang on, folks. Here we go. Video capture device. There I am. As quickly as I can disappear, I can make myself reappear. So you get an idea here in terms of the pattern. I'm thinking this is going to be, for you winter weather lovers, I think there are some fun times ahead, very challenging forecast times ahead, and lots of opportunities for rain and snow. For those of you who don't like the extreme cold, at least from that standpoint, it doesn't look like we're going to get, you know, anything crazy cold for the next couple of weeks, but we certainly could see temperatures near or below average in some areas of the east at times, and also in the Midwest at times. There's going to be more volatility, and with volatility sometimes comes some opportunities for snow. And certainly for those of you who like to ski, the ski conditions across the Northeast looking pretty good. Geo Soul, thank you so much, Geo Soul, for hitting the super chat button, and I really appreciate it. So let me just type a formal thank you, and you know, that's a, I don't even need the hot chocolate tonight. I think I'm doing tea today, because I was feeling a little bit earlier this afternoon. I thought I was felt like I was getting ready to come down with something, but that seems to have passed, thankfully. And as I pointed out to TechMan 330, if we wind up with a weaker version of the pattern we had, the weaker Arctic jet may allow for more room for storm systems to move across the country. A lot of the country's dry. We really could use some rain in some key areas across the lower Mississippi Valley and the Gulf states. So you know, we kind of need to get weather systems to start moving across the U.S. and break the dry pattern we've had. Let's see. Scott Olson, it's funny how when it comes to temperature, everything is relative. In the fall, 45 degrees is chilly. Today it was beautiful. I'll say it felt really good this morning. I finally got to go out and I had to clear some snow, and I could have done it without a jacket on. It was just amazing how comfortable it felt with temperatures just in the low to mid 30s at the time, and not much of a wind, and the sun. It just felt really, really good. By contrast, what it felt like on Saturday when I was out there trying to replace my mailbox was awful. Okay, and the human body does get used to this stuff fairly quickly. James NASCAR, hi back to you. Thank you, David Fuller. I did see you did buy one of my mugs. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it. Drink plenty of coffee or tea or whatever your favorite beverage is out of it. A large hello to William F. Good to see you here. And a thumbs up back to Tint Rolled Up. Is Michigan going to get some snow this weekend? Kendall Bailey. I was looking at the Detroit area. It looks like southern Michigan more than anything else. But you know what? Let me just double check here. 1 second. Let me just double check, because I'm going to do this off screen because it's a little faster. The southern part of the state is going to do this, particularly the southeastern part of Michigan, I think is going to do better than the north or northwest part with this next weather system that's coming into the Ohio Valley. The worst way to make a live stream, the worst way to miss a live stream commuting. Delvin, yes. But you've been here all the whole time today. That's terrific. Good to see you here today. Frontal wave Sunday into Monday. I don't think so, but I think Tuesday into Wednesday might be something. If that energy that comes down out of Canada is something a little more substantial than what models are indicating, and we saw what just happened last week. So nothing is impossible. Earl Warren, hi back to you. Is there a chance a Saturday ice storm could move east and south to be in Middletown? I think there's a chance that we could see it maybe end with some snow and ice in the northwestern counties. I don't think you'll see it as you head to the south, as you head further south. So I think you may have to be up in the northwestern counties. I'm kind of openly speculating here. I could tell you, by the way, that the IBM Watson Deep Thunder model, which did really well with the snowstorm last week, actually has a colder look and would argue for a changeover to ice or snow as far south as 195. So I'm going to be watching the Deep Thunder model very, very closely here over the next couple of days, because it did so well last week. I want to see if it has a repeat performance, and if it is, it might be the go-to model for a while. I kind of believe that you try to find the model that works, and then you stick with it until it stops working. And again, Deep Thunder did really well, so we'll see if it can make it 2 for 2. Always smiling, the euro does look nasty, and for you guys, I haven't paid too much attention to how well the European has performed on your side of the Atlantic. I know that on our side of the Atlantic, it has not done very well at all. So I of course watch it, but and I look at it every day. But it's in one of its down cycles right now where it's not holding up well at all. DJ Daniels, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Winter weather info. Am I positive that Europe will have those northwesterly winds? Models are agreeing. I think so. I think at least for several days next week, that should be the case. If the model's good, if the pattern is going to turn colder overall in the east, not the Arctic cold, but a setup for colder weather for at least the first part of next week, if not all of next week, that should coincide with a colder view for you guys. This is not being driven by an east-based block, so I think that it'll be more transient in nature, but you should get into some colder weather. But we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll see where it goes. The models have been fairly consistent for a number of runs about that for the UK. Daniello, major blizzard possible for New okay, we just had a blizzard, so kind of let's take it back a notch. We can't get greedy. You can go years sometimes without seeing a storm like what we saw last week. So let's not get greedy and push for a second one. Although if you've had one, the odds are a little stronger that you could have a second one, as opposed to what in winter where the pattern just is not favorable. The chances of getting a snowstorm like we had last week, not good when the overall pattern is not favorable. But we had all the pieces together, so I don't think it's impossible that we could see those pieces come together a second time, maybe in a different sort of way, but it could happen. But let's not rush it to next week already, okay? Need a bit of a break. And Tirade revival, yeah, 8 days, right, Nate? Definitely speculative at this point. So we're not even going to go down that road. Tint roll up, big snowstorms in the 631 area code are the best. I agree with you. We've had plenty of those and plenty of 20-inch plusers that I've experienced out in the 631 area code. James Hines. It's been interesting that there's been a lot of sea effect snow, which makes up for the lack of snow because of the storm tracks have been generally to the west of us. Yeah, I have noticed that. You've been getting, at least up in England and Scotland, and you've been getting these setups where you do get that North Sea wind. So I think that yes, it has made up for that bad forecast. The bad storm track, but. Again, I think you might have that kind of favorable window there for a little while next week. I'm usually a coffee guy too, David Fuller, but I was kind of feeling a little under it, so I went the peach green tea route today. Nova Scotia. All right, hang on, and then gonna have to call it a day because the top of the hour is getting close. So let's pull up Eastern Canada for everybody. I'll leave myself there. And, got to put that to the top. Just a second. Okay. A little slow on the uptake today. And here's Eastern Canada. And we'll go back to the beginning. Now, this system that's going to bring the ice storm possibilities for upstate New York and northern New England also brings significant ice. Look at the extent of the model bringing ice up into New Brunswick and on up through parts of Newfoundland. And then that storm, of course, pulls out. Another system, a coastal system that brings some snow to parts of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland as we move into early next week. And then we have this coastal low for late Tuesday into Wednesday that might graze. Looks like it brings Nova Scotia and Newfoundland some decent snows from that as it develops. It actually strengthens to a fairly impressive looking storm there as it goes as it approaches Newfoundland and moves out to the northeast. And then there's more action after that. So it looks like you're getting into some prime wintertime weather in Eastern Canada once we get through this mess for this weekend where we've got the ice involved. Again, now that I'm paying close attention to this, the ice storm potential up into New Brunswick and over into Newfoundland and northern Nova Scotia. I'm going to be interested in learn from this in terms of how this system all plays out. And again, watching going forward, whether is cold air going to be more important as we head toward the weekend with this frontal boundary in the east and the wave that's going to develop on it. A few models suggest that it might be, so we will be paying attention to that. Okay, folks, going to call it an evening here. Hope everybody had a great day. I hope you enjoyed, if you're in the area where you had that the temperatures climb up into the 40s today. Good for you. And we'll be a little colder tomorrow. We'll see where we go. I think we'll probably see some 50s, although snowpack is going to play a role in terms of how warm it gets into the eastern part of the United States. It's going to play a big role, but it's also going to melt a lot of that snowpack away. And then we'll get into the weekend, and we'll get into next week, and we'll have tons of stuff to be looking at. All right, so everybody have a great day. Check out the website posts at meteorologistjoecioffi.com, and then at 9 roughly 9:15 or let's say 9:20 Eastern time on my Facebook page. It'll be the Joe and Joe show with Joe Rayo and me, and we'll live stream a look at the new NAM model and talk about the long range and the short range and the medium range and maybe even the oven range. All right, so everybody have a great Tuesday evening. We'll see you later. If not, we will see you tomorrow right here on my YouTube channel.